today is Bitcoin, what they call the halving, right?
Happy halving day to those who celebrate. Yes, 10 hours away from now, it looks like.
It sounds like something that maybe would happen, in that, what was that film that happened in Norway, and it was like that summer festival. It's like the halving, and they're all gathered in some beautiful place.
Yes, yeah. What was that movie? What was that? It was
I don't know, but it was creepy.
It was one I wouldn't watch.
Right, and it was that it could have been called the halving, or
yes,
when magic goes bad. David Copperfield stars in the halving. Now I'm gonna cut this woman in half, and he can't put her back. Maybe, I don't know.
That would be a good plot.
Yeah, it would.
That's not what the halving is for Bitcoin, though.
Yeah.
And you've seen the price go up. There's been various reasons for that over the past year. The ETFs, meaning that a lot of institutional money is now flowing into Bitcoin for the first time, really. That was a big catalyst of it. The other one is the halving, which happens every, 4 years. And you don't know exactly when it's going to happen, but as it gets closer and closer, they can kind of specify it. And it's going to be today at some point. About 10 hours from now.
And what does it mean exactly?
So basically, when Bitcoin started, you have to have miners who are going to mine the Bitcoin to kind of bring it into availability for everybody.
I knew this involved miners.
No,
online.
It's not like a Jeffrey Epstein thing. This is like,
different kind of miner.
Yeah, like think of like a coal miner, except digitally, right?
Okay.
And so,
what are they wearing? Are they wearing
no,
pants?
you don't need. That's not important.
Okay, all right.
That's not important.
All right,
and by
good,
the way,
I'm
knowing
glad.
Bitcoin miners, no, they're not wearing pants. They're in their underwear in their mom's basement. At least that's how it started, right? It was people in their underwear in their mom's basement, basically. And they were mining tons and tons of Bitcoin. Now, remember, Bitcoin, there will only ever be 21 million of them. They are sort of, if you think of them being mined, they are slowly mined throughout this time. I think the last one we mined something like 140. I don't know. It's like it's a long way, but the basic idea with a halving is every 4 years, the reward for the miners gets cut in half. So the reason that's important is the supply shrinks. So maybe you go back years and years and years and years, there was tons and tons of Bitcoin going out getting mined every single day. And now every halving, that number gets cut in half. And I think it was, I don't know, it was like each block, which is about every 10 minutes, each one of those is like, it was 6 Bitcoin were freed into the world, released into the world. Now it's like 3. It shrinks every 4 years. So then it becomes 1.75 or 1.5 and 1.25. I mean, it's not the exact numbers, but the bottom line
until it gets to 0 and there's no more Bitcoin left.
And that's at 21 million Bitcoin. So you are now, I think it's 6-3 roughly in this particular halving. And the other part about the halving that has been important to note is every time there has been one over the next 6 months, there has been a massive increase in the price of Bitcoin. Now, will this happen this time? No one knows. Past performance is not indicative of future results. We all know the disclaimer. But it is...
we really do know that disclaimer. You may not know that disclaimer, but we do.
Yeah, I guess. Very, very true. And so...
The views of Stu are not necessarily those of the host.
This is not financial advice. Past performance is not indicative of future results. We don't know. We've also had a very large rise over the past year. So some people theorize that it's already built in, right? This time, the rise we've already had is basically, part of what the halving would bring. However, when you look at the charts over the past 3 or 4 or 5 halvings, we've had massive increases. All those times where all of a sudden everybody around you was talking about Bitcoin, almost all of those periods happened between 6 months, 3 to 9 months after a halving.
After, not before.
Not before. You've seen some rises before, but generally speaking, the real pop has happened after.
Because this has been a real pop. Now, this has just brought us back to where it was.
Yep. So there's a reason to believe maybe there's more here. Again, the last one was in 2020. Do you remember the 2021 phenomenon?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you had a drop back down. We're now back to where we were basically in 2021 at the absolute peak.
Make a case that somebody should buy just a fraction of Bitcoin.
Okay.
I mean, when it first started and everybody was on board, everybody was buying Bitcoin because it was like, I've got 3 Bitcoin.
Yep.
And now most people cannot afford
an entire
buy-
Bitcoin, right?
No.
Of course not. But so let me put it this way. Right now, you'd say, okay, a Bitcoin, it's at $60-something thousand. Really,
64.
it's basically only for like a millionaire, right? Someone who's got tons of money who wants to throw into a Bitcoin, right? You might say only millionaires can afford it. Some people might say something like that. Well, think of it this way. There are 24.5 million millionaires just in the United States.
24.5 million
Yes.
millionaires.
Right. Right now, there will never be enough Bitcoin for every millionaire in the United States to own one. That doesn't include millionaires around the world. There are already too many millionaires for just millionaires to get one of these things.
How much of it do you think is lost? Permanently. Forever lost.
Like, for example, we know the Satoshi's account, which, the guy who invented Bitcoin, who we don't know who it is, or if it was a group of people, or if he's dead. I think they're dead. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
But he has an account with 1 million of these things in it that has never moved. So we basically know, unless this guy reveals himself somehow in the future, which is not likely, that 1 million of them are lost. We also know early on, people were mining these things and getting thousands and tens of thousands of them and just turning their computer off and not thinking they were worth anything. The estimates are that probably something like a third of them are lost forever. So instead of 21 million, maybe it's 14 million, maybe it's 15 million, somewhere in that vicinity. Now that they're valuable, people are not losing them, of course, at least as often. But it's still happening every day. People screw it up, they lose it, they send it to the wrong account. I mean, that stuff still happens. But you're probably talking about, let's say, 15 million that actually will exist. You have 24.5 millionaires in the United States. In the world, you have about 60 million millionaires. So if you split up all the Bitcoin in the world just among millionaires, they could only get a quarter of one each. Now, if you can put some in there, I mean, the idea that these things are going to go down in value over the very long term, to me, is unlikely. And part of that is, at the beginning of this, nobody knew. Right? Like when I first invested in Bitcoin, and I don't have a lot of money in Bitcoin, but when I first started in Bitcoin, my thought was, I'm going to throw some money at this. Let's see what happens. I have absolutely no idea. My thought was, there's a good chance. I said this to you at the time. Good chance it goes to zero. Mm-hmm. Like it was a total gamble. I had no idea. I liked the concept of money that can't be inflated and printed. Right? I liked that concept. That's why I was interested in it. But I mean, how many multi-trillion-dollar industries can you remember going to zero? I mean, is there any example of this?
White Star Line?
I don't think they were worth trillions, right? Like, Enron was a big company, right? Mm-hmm. Don't remember it being worth trillions. I mean, Bitcoin's market cap is over $1 trillion.
No, I can't see it going to zero unless all of the central banks in the world just say not.
It's so
not
resistant
money.
To that now, though.
It's
so resistant to that. We're seeing countries open up and start accepting it. I mean, the United States of America has now accepted Bitcoin ETFs. That's a huge embrace of this technology. And look, I don't know. I can't tell you that it's not going to go down in the future. I would be surprised if it never goes down below these levels again. It probably will. So you might buy today and at some point be down. A lot of people bought in 2021 and thought, oh my gosh, I've lost all my money. Except now pretty much every person who's ever bought Bitcoin in its history, if they held on to it, is either about even or up.
Everybody. Even the people who bought at the very peak.
Yeah, unless you bought a couple of months ago when it hit like 69.70 for a couple days. There's a few people, but generally speaking, almost no one who has ever purchased this and kept it has lost money. I mean, that's quite a statement, right? Like, what other investments can you point to that has that type of record? There's almost none. So I don't know. We don't know what the future holds, but man, this is a technology that has proved itself incredibly resilient.
I get really pissed at you every time we talk about this. Every time.
You get pissed at me?
Yes, I do.
Why are you pissed at me?
I blame you for bad decisions. Blame you.
Why?
I was with Mark Andreessen.
Yes.
It was it might have even been a fraction of a cent.
It was well before I bought it, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Because I remember the conversation.
Yeah. And he was just going to start some new thing with this new currency.
Mm-hmm. I remember you telling me about this at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I fortunately did not listen.
Yeah, neither did I.
Mm-hmm.
And, we could have put $100 into it at that point.
Oh, my gosh. $100. You know how much that would be worth
It
now?
was a fraction of a cent. Wasn't it?
I don't remember if it was that low, but it was really early. Really early.
It was right as he started the digital wallet, Coinbase. It was right as he started it.
Gosh,
okay,
this makes me physically ill.
I think he actually told me that before he started it, or he may have.
Or he was in the middle of raising money or whatever.
Yeah, he was like, "Hey, do you know anything about Bitcoin? No, you should invest. Just take $5,000 and just throw it in this." And I'm like, And at the time, $5,000 was,
I mean, you'd be probably a billionaire.
I would be.
I mean, I can't imagine how many you would have. I love this story.
Look it up. Look it up. Look up when they opened Coinbase and what the price of Bitcoin was. $5,000.
So it depends. It's hard to know exactly when you talk to him. I mean, the Coinbase basically started in 2012. So 2012 is a little bit later than it was. You're talking a fraction of a cent. So it was about $10 in 2012 when it actually started selling Bitcoin. When Coinbase began that process, it was about $10. If you spent $5,000 then, you would have about 500 Bitcoin, which would be worth $32.5 million, which would be incredibly nice. However, my remembrance of this story was it was
before that.
Like before that, when it was sort of being dreamt up. So I mean, it
was one of the first times I ever had heard about Bitcoin, and I think I came back to you and I said, "What is Bitcoin?" And you were like, "Oh, people buy pizzas with it." And I'm like,
I did not. This is ridiculous.
That's
history.
exactly what he said.
I don't think I knew much of anything about it. I had heard of it, but I didn't know anything about it at that time.
You knew people were buying pizzas.
I definitely was not discouraging you in investing $5,000.
That's the way I remember it,
That's
Your
exactly
Honor.
how you remember it.
That's
it's just not
exactly
true.
how I remember it, Your Honor.
I mean, it's one fascinating thing I think that really hasn't fully taken root yet when it comes to the Bitcoin phenomenon.
By the way, hang on just a second. I just have to say something. I said at the time, that on the air too.
Oh, really? We should go back and find it.
Yeah.
We could probably find.
Mark Andreessen, he said Bitcoin, blah, blah, blah. But, Warren Buffett, he says if you don't understand it, you shouldn't invest in it.
I wonder if we can find that. I'm going to look for this now.
If anybody did it. What our earliest time was when we said, hey, maybe you should throw some money in it. I don't know if I'm going to do it. If anybody in the audience, well, of course there's somebody that was in the audience. They're not now.
They're not driving to work. They're billionaires.
On a yacht someplace.
Well, I think that's one of the things I think is most interesting in a societal sense, that we had a lot of people, because the early people into Bitcoin, not like the people necessarily today, but the early people into Bitcoin were people who, generally speaking, were ideologically, let's say, libertarian, or somewhat close to that.
Correct.
And there are now massive amounts of people who became insanely wealthy over this process and will continue probably to get even wealthier. And those people who would have been probably marginalized in society at some level, maybe they have been successful, but would never had that sort of power.
No, they were the losers, loners, and creeps.
And we've seen, I mean, libertarians many of them will describe themselves this way.
Yes.
So we've seen now that many of these people have made an impact, right? We've seen a lot of them. I mean, Mark Andreessen, not necessarily an ideological libertarian, but a lot of these people have risen. I mean, one of the richest people in the world, two of the richest people in the world are the Winklevoss twins. The people who got Facebook stolen from them.
I think they're fictional characters.
They may be. They were in a movie once, so I don't know.
Yeah, no, I just think that I'm sure people can play them, but I think anybody with Winklevoss as their name and their twins, I think that's too magical to be real.
To believe, but it is. I mean,
let's call on the Winklevoss twins.
For everything
they show up, you say their name 3 times. Hi, we're here to grant any wish with our magical Bitcoin.
Right.
It's fake.
Consider that they, basically had in my opinion, Facebook stolen from them. They wound up getting thrown out, got some money for it, but were not insanely wealthy, and wound up not with one, but two different giant revolutions of the world. They were at the founding of almost. They invested a fortune in Bitcoin right after that, and now are multi-billionaires because of it. It's a weird people that wouldn't have normally been at the top of our society are now there. And hopefully they've kept some of these small government roots through that process. And maybe they can influence the country in a way.
No, because then when you get that wealthy, then what you do is then you're like, I can get somebody on the phone. I can make this happen. I don't want a stop sign here. And I think we should also kill the poor. I'm going to get both of those done. I'm going to call my council member and, my master over at the WEF. Get that done.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You start protecting it, and then that all goes to hell.
Maybe, who knows?
We should do what Star Trek did and abolish all money. Just learn how to live in harmony.
And worked out well for them. They were at war in every episode. What are you talking about?
Harmony? How did they pay for those starships? How ridiculous was that?